This is First Contact, Stories of the Call Center. Some of the things that we've heard, here on the show and otherwise at times has been like, hey, when you see agent adherence, it's kind of an oppressive metric. Now, whether or not you agree or not, I'd love to get your viewpoint on this. And specifically, now you've gone through a pandemic for the last, 18 plus months. How has that really impacted your view, if any, on that metric?
Well, it hasn't changed much. I think early in our consulting days, so we're going way back now. Adherence is just a data point. It's really how you use it and how it is part of your culture. And you have to, I think, understand that adherence is the kind of metric that it needs to be socialized within the overarching reach of what you're trying to accomplish with the workforce management platform, right? So it's tied to your culture. It's tied to what your strategies are for delivering service to your clients. So it's just a piece of information. It's how you manage it with your agent population, I think, that makes it successful and or perceived to be oppressive, as you put it.
Yeah. So with that said, let's say you're talking to an agent and that agent just looks at this is just oppressive, right? This is not as a negative stat for me, right? What is it that you tell that agent so they understand the importance of how adherence impacts the business, them as an agent, and also management?
Well, I would say this is the key, right? Adherence really is about the team, right? What we're trying to make sure everyone is doing is that everybody on a particular customer service team, for instance, is doing their part. So what does that really mean, right? What it means is there's been a plan in place for the system to tell you and remind you, hey, Daryl, you have a break coming up in 5 minutes, and it's important that I take that break at the appropriate time. The reason it's appropriate that I take that break at the appropriate time is for my team members. It's for them, right? So if I take my break at the right time or go to lunch or have my meeting at the appropriate time, what we're doing is we're creating fairness about how the work is processed across your team. And I think once you give the agent the perspective that they're not only creating fairness for their team members, but their team members, by following their adherence, are creating fairness for them. I think a good example is imagine a shift change, for instance. What if everybody gets sloppy about when they get off or when they get on? Well, there's a lot of detrimental things that are going to happen there. Certainly, the customers are going to suffer, but the agents that showed up on time, they're going to be carrying a greater degree of the workload. So there's a lot of negative things that can happen by not following your assigned schedule. So I think the team aspect, and I think if you go into a contact center, they are team players. That's what they think about. They look at their team. I think that perspective would really help them overcome that negative perception.
Yeah, I think it's critical that when you have any type of association with the word team, right? And we always go back to sports analogies for those that aren't into sports. I think the same idea still applies, right? That sports players don't just show up to a big game and they magically perform really well, right? They have to do a ton of practice, a ton of scripts, right? A lot of plays that they follow. And so what happens is if they're not in the right place at the right time, everything that everybody else has worked hard to achieve goes down the drain, right? So anytime an individual looks at it as that they're greater than the team, then you start to see these gaps of, well, it's just my time. It's when I come in. It's when I leave. It's what I do. They don't realize that everything they're doing is impacting positively or negatively everybody within their circle. And as long as they look at it as that them doing their part is not only beneficial for them and their upward mobility or their success, it also directly impacts everyone else around them. And I think that's critical, as you just mentioned, that team aspect of it is you can't look at it as just me. You have to look at the inclusiveness of how does it affect everybody. So I love that. It's great.